Choi Mi-ra pushed my application back beneath the brass rail before the ink had dried. Han Gyong-chol's red seal covered my old guild crest. Expelled. Rank stripped. Petition denied. I had already been judged worthless. This was the association making sure the judgment followed me. The figures beneath the seal hurt worse than the word. 8,736 gold of debt, no active members, no legal rank, and a reputation recorded as ruined. Without registration, I could not claim a quest, and without a claim, I could not pay 1 coin of it. Mi-ra kept her voice low. Han had ordered every clerk to reject any filing tied to my name. Behind me, licensed parties collected contracts and laughed about sewer work beneath their dignity. I folded the denied form once. Being cast out had ended my old guild. Accepting it would end me. On the steps, royal gold light opened across my vision. Guild system, dormant. It offered no treasure, no borrowed strength, only a condition. Lead a real team to a verified achievement. My leadership would be the ceiling, and a false victory would earn nothing. I read the smaller rules while rain soaked the rejection in my hand. Commands would drain my stamina and mana. Broken promises would drain trust. Rank would create access, not gold, and every meal, repair, filing fee, and bandage would still come from funds I did not have. One notice remained unclaimed: sewer larvae beneath the dyer's quarter, witnessed by an association scrystone. Payment on complete extermination. The tunnels narrowed to a single choke. Every party wanted damage. I needed the one thing they had all dismissed, a wall that could choose where damage happened. An Soo-jin stood beside the discarded notices with a patched tower shield strapped to her back. She was unmistakably feminine, even under worn armor, full-busted, narrow-waisted, and broad through rounded hips. Yet every recruiter looked only at the weapon she did not carry. An E-rank leader called her a wall without a sword and handed her trial badge back. Soo-jin did not argue. She checked the rawhide spitchin along her shield rim instead, the practical habit of someone who knew mockery would not stop the next blow from landing. I asked how long she could hold a passage one body wide, not how many kills she owned, and not why everyone else had refused her. She measured the shield's split lower brace and answered, 47 breaths against larvae, fewer if acid reached the stitching. I drew the sewer bend in spilled water. Soo-jin would brace at the narrowest stone, angle the larvae left, and give me space to collapse their egg sacs with alchemical lime. Her defense was not a delay before victory. Her defense was the condition that made victory possible. She asked what happened when the 47th breath ended. Other leaders, she said, always promised support and then ordered one more hold when loot was visible. I put my broken guild badge on the table and promised withdrawal at 43, leaving 4 breaths for retreat. Soo-jin turned the badge over in her gloved hand. She did not trust me. She trusted a plan with a measured exit. That was enough for a provisional contract. I spent 211 gold on filing and witnessed access, money borrowed against a claim we had not earned. A reliable shield plate cost more than our entire projected margin, so we repaired what existed. I cleaned the split brace while Soo-jin threaded new rawhide through old holes. 93 gold bought resin, lime, and 3 iron straps. None of it would survive careless positioning. The patched shield had a method and a limit. Keep acid off the lower seam, spread impacts across the upper boss, and rotate her footing every 7th strike. If I lost count, the brace would fail before Soo-jin did. Leadership, I learned, could be measured in another person's bruises. Meals and lamp oil took another 64 gold, and one night of floor space took 37. With the later repair reserve, our provisional costs would total 464. I wrote every coin besides Soo-jin's share. Trust built in the dark still required an honest ledger. The association's scrystone blinked when we crossed the iron grate. That witness made the danger count, but it also made failure permanent. I marked the retreat bend with chalk, set 2 lime jars behind it, and repeated the signal. 3 knocks meant leave, whatever remained ahead. Soo-jin took the choke with her shield, canted 11 degrees toward the drain. The first larvae hit like sacks of wet stone. She gave ground half a boot, reset, and forced every snapping mouth into the channel I had chosen. A wall, yes, but a wall with judgment. I fed commands through the royal gold thread linking us. High brace, left heel, breathe. Each one pulled heat from my chest. By the 19th impact, my hands shook, and the system offered no relief. If my orders became noise, Sujin would be safer ignoring me. Acid splashed the shield at the 31st breath and found the lower seam. Resin smoked. Sujin shifted her rounded hips behind the brace, planted both boots, and held while I rolled the first lime jar past her edge. The powder burst across 6 egg sacs and stopped the next wave hatching. At 40 breaths, 3 adult larvae still clawed over the dead. The old version of me would have demanded one more push to protect the payout. I counted 41, 42, 43, then struck the pipe 3 times. Sujin withdrew exactly as I had promised. Her retreat exposed the choke for 4 precious breaths. I dropped the second jar, kicked loose the rotted sluice pin, and Dyer's water smashed the remaining larvae into the lime pit. We survived because her reserve had been preserved, not because either of us had become stronger for free. The witness stone turned green only after I counted every carcass and burned the final egg cluster. Quest complete was one verified achievement. Holding the choke through the planned withdrawal was another. Guild system activated in royal gold light. 2 marks. No stage triumph could have bought them. The system recognized Sujin as one active F-rank member and sharpened the formation we had actually proven. It did not give her a sword or mend her shield. It preserved our timing under pressure. The cracked brace remained cracked, and the next hold would still demand repair. Sojin sat against the outlet wall, forearms purple beneath her guards. I thanked her for winning the clear. She corrected me. We had won it. That single word mattered more than the green witness, because the system could record teamwork, but could not force her to believe in mine. The registered claim paid 1,137 gold. Provisional filing, meals, materials, lodging, and shield repair consumed 464. The remaining 673 reduced my debt to 8,063, still crushing, but finally moving. Mira entered 2 marks, 1 member, and 3 points of public reputation from the witnessed clear. That qualified us for F-rank registration, the lowest legal rung. Its consequence was sharp. We could claim future work, but every failure from now on would be attached to our names. I offered Sujin the first badge of a guild that owned no hall and owed more gold than either of us could imagine. I told her again that pure defense was our victory condition. She fastened the badge above her shield strap and said she would hold only for orders worth trusting. Before we left, Mira warned me that reopening an expelled file triggered Han Gyang-chol's personal review. F-rank registration had given us legal access and painted a target on it. Han could not erase a witnessed clear, so he would wait for a failure he could certify. I later learned Li Gu-tae paid a clerk 67 gold for a copy of our sewer report. He was not interested in 2 dead egg clusters or 3 reputation points. He wanted the line describing a discarded shieldbearer obeying my withdrawal signal and surviving. I walked into the rain beside one woman carrying a cracked shield. Guild, 2 marks. Members, 1 F rank. Rank, registered F. Reputation, 3. 8,063 gold of debt remained. It looked like almost nothing, which was why our enemies could still afford to underestimate it. F-rank registration opened the quest ledger and locked us to its worst page. Our sewer clear had earned 2 marks and 3 points of reputation, but better contracts required E rank. 8,063 gold of debt kept charging interest, while respectable guilds refused the work we could legally touch. Park Jian arrived with quarry dust on his coat and an emergency contract in his fist. 13 stonecutters were trapped below a collapsed lift, while slate gnashers nested in the only rescue cut. The quarry offered coin, but not enough for any ranked party willing to risk the tunnel. Sujin could hold the gnashers, but she could not break the fallen counterweight before the lower chamber flooded. Park named 1 discarded adventurer strong enough to do it, Ji Ha-ram, an F-rank berserker whose last party had fled after she attacked the man trying to restrain her. Ji Ha-ram waited in a shed outside the license gate, a red restraint rope looped around one wrist. She was powerfully feminine, full bust, cinched waist, wide rounded hips, and the muscles beneath that shape held the restless tension of a blade nobody trusted to sheath. She gave me her name before I could ask, and her warning before I could offer work. At 31 heartbeats of rage, faces blurred. At 37, any hand grabbing her became an enemy. Her old leaders counted kills and called that uncertainty an acceptable cost. I told her I needed 23 heartbeats to break the counterweight, and 6 more to clear a retreat. Su Jin would funnel every monster away from that path. When I rang an iron wedge twice, Haram would leave, even if the stone had not broken, and even if the reward vanished. Haram drew a red line across the map where the rescue cut met open ground. She could unleash her rage beyond it, but she would not carry rage across it toward workers or allies. My task was not to aim her like a weapon. It was to preserve a route back to herself. Su Jin studied the switchback and chose 3 shield positions. At the first, she would receive the pack. At the second, she would turn it. At the third, she would hold a clear lane to the red line. She was volunteering to stand where Haram's worst mistake would arrive first. I offered them both the truth. If the lift failed, the contract might pay only a failed rescue allowance, and our food would be borrowed again. Su Jin accepted the risk. Haram accepted only after I wrote the withdrawal signal into the registered plan where the quarry witness could see it. Park's broker fee was 203 gold. Reinforced restraints cost 197, food and water 121, and shield resin, medicine, and lamp oil another 93. 614 gold vanished before we touched the rescue cut. The restraints were not chains for Haram. We fixed one end to a quarry sled and braided the other into a waist harness she could release herself. If rage stole her direction, the line would guide her toward open ground without giving anyone a reason to grab her. Su Jin spent the last resin on her shield's acid seam, then marked the 3 anchor points with white chalk. Our scarce gear had to solve exact problems. The shield would shape the pack, the harness would preserve retreat, and the iron wedge would carry my promise above the battle noise. The witness crystal counted 13 living workers below the collapse, and 9 slate gnashers moving between us. Water had reached their knees and climbed a finger every 7 minutes. Saving 12 would still mean one family was receiving a body instead of a husband, so the objective allowed no convenient losses. Su Jin advanced first, striking shield on stone to pull the pack uphill. I called each turn only after she set her boots. The gilt thread tightened through my ribs with every command, but the gnashers followed her iron boss and left Haram's route to the counterweight clear. Haram reached the fallen beam and asked for the count. I gave her 23. Rage rolled through her like a furnace draft. Her pupils narrowed, her breath broke, and her first axe strike split slate the quarry crew had failed to move with a 6-man winch. At the first anchor, Su Jin absorbed 4 gnashers and turned their claws into the wall. At the second, the repaired seam began to peel. She did not chase a kill. She gave ground along our chalk, carrying the whole pack farther from Haram's retreat with every measured step. I wanted to reinforce both women at once, but leadership was not wanting. I had enough command strength for 7 precise calls before my sight blurred. I spent 5 on Su Jin's rotations, 1 on the workers' crawl order, and saved the last for Haram's withdrawal. The counterweight cracked at 19 heartbeats. Behind it, trapped workers dragged one another toward the lift ladder, while Haram struck again and again. Each blow freed more stone and drove her deeper into rage. The fastest rescue and the safest rescue had become different choices. The 13th worker cleared the beam at 28 heartbeats, but a gnasher's alpha dropped into the retreat lane. Haram could kill it with another burst. Li Gyute watched from the quarry rim, waiting for those extra heartbeats to turn rescue into testimony. I struck the iron wedge twice. Haram heard me. I saw the moment her body leaned toward the alpha, while the promise pulled the other way. I could have shouted one more attack and secured valuable hide. Instead, I repeated the withdrawal and accepted that the loot might escape. She crossed the red line at 30 heartbeats, axe raised and eyes unable to separate us from prey. Su Jin stepped into her view without grabbing her. Shield grounded, voice steady, she counted the same retreat cadence we had practiced until Haram's axe lowered by 1 trembling inch. The alpha followed, but Su Jin had kept the 3rd anchor untouched. She caught it at the quarry mouth while Haram fought her own breath behind the red line. I dropped the release pin on the quarry sled, and 1,200 pounds of waste slate buried the creature without asking Haram to return. When rage released her, Haram looked first for blood on our bodies. Sujin showed her an unbroken gauntlet and said she would be her anchor again, by choice, not because I ordered it. Haram's relief was quiet enough that only someone standing close would have heard it. The system verified 3 new achievements. All 13 workers extracted, the monster pack diverted from the retreat, and Haram recalled without allied harm. Guild rose to 5 marks because the plan worked as a team. Killing the Alpha alone would not have proven any of that. Rescue pay and sold claws produced 1,913 gold. After 614 for park, food, restraints, medicine, and repair stock, 1,299 reached the debt. 6,764 remained. Our roster became 2 F-rank members, and the witnessed rescue lifted reputation from 3 to 7. Yet official rank stayed F. 5 marks made us credible enough to receive more dangerous offers, not licensed enough to demand fair pay. Progress had increased the risk faster than the rate. I offered Haram a guild badge with the withdrawal clause written into her member record. She accepted it only after Sujin signed as her chosen anchor. I had recruited strength, but their trust did not run solely through me. That made the formation harder to break and harder to betray. Lee approached the rescued workers while we packed below. I saw silver in his palm, and fear in theirs. He offered money for any statement that Haram had threatened an ally. 13 survivors had watched her stop at the red line, so he left without the lie he came to buy. He did leave with something useful. Proof that our newest member could be pushed close to losing herself. 5 guild marks and 7 reputation made ridicule less effective, so our enemies had begun studying bottlenecks. Sujin's cracked shield, my limited commands, and Haram's 31st heartbeat. We returned with 2 F-rank women walking side by side. Guild, 5 marks. Rank, still registered F. 6,764 gold of debt remained. Haram had not been cured, and I had not controlled her. I had kept one promise long enough for her to choose the next one. Our next legal offer came with 7 living lights fading beneath a burial crypt. Grave robbers had broken a seal, raised 23 dead, and trapped mourners behind the inner gate. The fee was better than quarry work because ordinary F-rank parties could not evacuate wounded people through an undead corridor. Sujin could seal a doorway and Haram could open one, but neither could keep 7 injured civilians alive through the climb. The association ledger listed a cleric no guild would hire, Wu Da-un, 20 years old, 4 failed parties, 1 healing spell that could not reliably distinguish the dying from the dead. 6,764 gold of debt argued for speed. 5 verified marks and 7 reputation argued that another clear might complete our roster. I ignored both arguments long enough to ask the only useful question. Exactly how did Da-un's healing fail? Wu Da-un stood inside a chalk circle with both hands wrapped in linen. Her figure was softly curvy and feminine, full-busted, narrow at the waist, wide through rounded hips, but she held herself inward, as if making less of her body could reduce the life her magic took. She named herself and demonstrated with a wilted herb and a dead beetle. Her pulse restored everything living or unliving within 14 feet. If an undead crossed the edge, it healed too. If she narrowed the spell to exclude it, the missing vitality came out of her own blood. Da-un could cast safely only once every 83 breaths, and 3 narrow casks would make her collapse. I did not promise to fix her. I placed 7 stones inside the chalk circle and 23 outside, then asked whether she could trust us to keep the dead beyond 14 feet. Our formation became a moving sanctuary. Sujin would lock each corridor beyond Da-un's 14-foot radius. Haram would carry civilians from one chalk circle to the next during the 83-breath recovery. I would track distance and time instead of pretending healing erased mistakes. Da-un chose the cast word and the stop word herself. At Mercy, everyone living had to be inside. At Hollow, the cast ended even if wounds remained. Haram repeated both until she could say them through rage, while Sujin measured 14 feet with her shield laid flat 4 times. The contract rewarded evacuation and offered a separate bounty for the Crypt Warden's reliquary. I crossed out the bounty in our priority order. 7 civilians first, 4 retreat gates second, loot last. All 3 women signed beneath it before the witness crystal activated. Da-eun's blood tonic cost 418 gold. 2 nights of secure lodging for 3 exhausted members cost 173. The creditor's claim levy and debt service charge took 383 more. 974 gold was committed before payment. We could afford only 5 tonic vials. Da-eun needed 1 after every narrow cast, which meant the stock itself enforced our limit. Soo-jin wrapped each bottle behind her shield where impacts could not crush it, and Ha-ram gave up a spare axe loop to carry the evacuation blankets. No rank increase would refill those vials. We would have to earn the crypt claim, pay the costs, and apply what remained to principal. Da-eun saw me write her medicine before my debt in the ledger. She asked why. I told her dead members do not complete tomorrow's quest. Soo-jin met the first dead at a pillar gap and turned her tower shield sideways, sealing all but a handspan. Ha-ram slipped through the side passage and returned carrying 2 mourners, 1 over each shoulder. Da-eun waited until their boots crossed the 14-foot mark. Mercy. Gold-white light filled the chalk circle, knitting a crushed ankle and closing a scalp wound. Beyond it, 23 undead hammered Soo-jin's shield and received nothing. The method worked because her line held. Da-eun's power alone would have restored the same creatures trying to kill us. At Hollow, Da-eun stopped with both civilians still bruised but able to walk. I saw shame cross her face, the old belief that incomplete healing meant failure. Ha-ram put 1 survivor on his feet and said walking was enough. We moved before perfection could cost the recovery window. At the second sanctuary, a crawling corpse slipped beneath Soo-jin's shield and entered the radius as Da-eun cast. Its severed spine straightened in the same light that saved a child's breathing. 1 mistake had returned an enemy to strength and proved exactly why other parties feared her. I ordered Soo-jin to drive the healed corpse outward, but the command thread burned through my chest and arrived late. Da-eun narrowed the pulse on instinct. The child inhaled. Blood ran from Da-eun's nose. Her life had paid for the 14 inches our formation failed to control. Ha-ram could have killed the restored corpse immediately, but striking inside the circle risked every civilian. She lifted 3 survivors instead and trusted Soo-jin to hold. That choice cost us the reliquary route and preserved the people the registered objective actually counted. We reached the final stair with all 7 civilians alive, and Da-eun swaying after 2 casts. The last ascent required a 3rd. Soo-jin planted at the landing, while Ha-ram carried the slowest mourner upward, then returned for Da-eun before the 83rd recovery breath had finished. The crypt warden emerged below them, wearing the reliquary around its throat. Its bounty could have paid for better gear, and Ha-ram's axe was already turning toward it. Da-eun whispered mercy, finished the cast, and collapsed before she could say hollow. Ha-ram stopped chasing the warden with 1 step left to take. She sheathed her axe, caught Da-eun across both arms, and carried her through Soo-jin's line. We surrendered a valuable kill because survival had been written first, and because Ha-ram now believed the promise applied to Da-eun too. I had 1 clean command left. Soo-jin released the stair on my count, retreated behind Ha-ram, and hooked her shield under the portcullis chain. Ha-ram cut the rusted brake. The gate fell between the 7 living people and every undead, sealing the warden below without a final battle. The witness crystal verified 4 achievements. 7 civilians evacuated, 4 recovery zones completed, the undead sealed outside every successful heal, and the party withdrawn with all members alive. Guild rose from 5 marks to 9. The abandoned reliquary earned nothing, exactly as it should. Da-eun woke in the infirmary, asking whether she had healed the enemy. I told her yes, once, because our line failed. Then I told her she had saved 7 people because the team corrected it. Soo-jin and Ha-ram stood beside me, refusing to let her carry our shared error alone. The evacuation paid 2,447 gold. Medicine, lodging, and creditor charges consumed 974. The remaining 1,473 reduced our debt to 5,291 gold. 4 new marks brought guild to 9, and 7 living witnesses raised reputation from 7 to 12. Our official rank remained F, but the roster now held 3 F-rank women. A complete defensive, offensive, and support party made us eligible for a witnessed E-rank evaluation. I offered Da-eun the third badge and repeated our order. Survival before loot. Sujin signed it. Haram signed beneath her, still carrying blood from Da-eun's hands on her sleeve. Da-eun accepted because the rule had already cost us a bounty, which made it evidence instead of comfort. 9 verified marks forced the association to acknowledge our eligibility, but it also triggered formal scrutiny. Yoon Tae-guk received an order bearing Han Gyeong-cheol's seal, witness our next clear, record every cast, and treat one uncontrolled backfire as grounds to dissolve the guild. Yoon did not tear up the directive. An evaluator's refusal would let Han replace him with someone easier to control. Instead, he entered our crypt evidence exactly. 1 enemy healed, 7 civilians saved, no deaths, and reserved the collapsed silver mine as our trial. We ended the night with 9 marks, 3 F-rank women, 12 reputation, and 5,291 gold of debt. Our roster was finally complete. The next quest would decide whether it became a real team or an official record of why discarded people should stay discarded. Yoon Tae-guk met us at the collapsed silver mine with Han's dissolution order folded inside his witness ledger. 9 guild marks made us eligible for E-rank. They did not make us safe. 1 uncontrolled heal, 1 allied strike, or 1 false command could close our file for good. The registered objective was precise. Recover 11 trapped survey tags, clear the burrowing mites blocking the eastern shaft, and exit before the timber supports failed. E-rank would unlock licensed mine contracts. Failure would leave us in underpaid F-work with 5,291 gold of debt. Yoon asked for my command plan. My old answer would have listed every footstep as if leadership meant owning every thought. Instead, I gave him 4 commands. I would name the objective, Sujin would set the line, Haram would time the breach, and Da-eun would call recovery. The trial was not free. Evaluation and witness fees cost 421 gold. Rope, pitons, and timber wedges took 276. Da-eun's medicine cost 309, and 3 member shares reserved 332 more. 1,338 gold stood between the posted reward and our debt. The ropes had to bring back survey tags, the medicine had to preserve Da-eun's safe casts, and the shares had to prove promotion was not an excuse to make the women finance my ambition. I showed them the ledger before we descended. Sujin asked whether her line could overrule mine if she felt the support's shift. Haram asked whether breach timing was truly hers. Da-eun asked whether Hollow ended the trial if needed. I answered yes 3 times while Yoon recorded it. The mine split after 67 yards. Mite tracks crossed both branches, and 11 survey tags glimmered beyond unstable beams. I felt the guild thread connect to all 3 women at once. Holding it was like gripping 3 ropes while the ground pulled in different directions. I spent my first command on the only thing that belonged to me. Recover every tag, clear the eastern nest, and bring all 4 of us out. Then I stopped filling the shaft with instructions. The system could amplify a real structure. It could not make my attention wider than it was. Yoon walked behind us without advice. His witness crystal measured formation breaks, spell radius, rage duration, and my command drain. Han wanted evidence that our limits made us unsafe. We could answer only by handling those limits openly, not by pretending the crystal could not see them. The first might wave came from the west while our tags lay east. I began to call a shield angle, then bit the order back. Sujin touched the vibrating floor with 1 gauntlet, chose a support pillar 7 feet behind my mark, and declared the line herself. Her choice surrendered 1 accessible tag behind the mites, but protected the load-bearing brace. She planted her patched shield between 2 rails and funneled every shell into a channel narrow enough for Haram to ignore. Defense became control of time, space, and which loss we accepted first. The system confirmed her line because the mine confirmed it. The brace held, the gallery stayed open, and none of us entered Da-eun's future healing radius with an enemy. Trust did not feel warm in that moment. It felt like keeping my mouth shut while another person judged correctly. The eastern nest hid behind slate too thick for ordinary tools. Haram set her red cord, listened to the mite striking Sujin's shield, and refused my suggested opening. Breaching then would send the nest through the same gallery carrying our retreat rope. She waited 13 more heartbeats until Sujin rotated the pack past the rail switch. Then she called breach and entered rage on her own count. 3 axe blows split the slate inward, trapping the hatchlings behind fallen stone instead of releasing them into our backs. I used no command to start her and none to stop her. Haram ended at 26 heartbeats because that was the window she had judged. Yoon marked the controlled burst. More importantly, she returned across the red cord before Rage could ask whether one more strike was worth an ally. We recovered 8 tags before the ore chute shifted. When a timber cracked above Daun, I shouted 3 overlapping orders: duck, retreat, shield, and command mana tore through me without giving anyone a clear action. Sujin covered Daun on instinct while my knees hit the rail. Yoon recorded the waste, and I deserved it. My leadership ceiling was not a hidden number. It was the moment fear made me less useful than the women I was leading. I admitted I had enough strength for one final coordinated call, not the 6 I had pretended to hold. Sujin did not reassure me. She moved the line to the ore chute. Haram tied the last rope around her waist. Daun checked my pulse and said recovery would happen on her word. Their trust rose because I stopped disguising exhaustion as authority. The last 3 tags lay beside a wounded mite inside Daun's 14-foot circle. Killing it risked a rage burst under fractured stone. Healing immediately would restore it. Daun ordered Sujin to drag the creature beyond the chalked rope, while Haram descended for the tags. A falling shard cut Haram's thigh on the ascent. Daun waited until Sujin confirmed the mite outside 14 feet, then called mercy. The wound closed enough to bear weight. At the first tremor in the ceiling, Daun called hollow and ended the spell before life drain began. 3 tags came up, but a silver reliquary remained below. I saw its value and said nothing. Daun called recovery, which meant leave. Sujin released her line. Haram abandoned the reliquary, and all 3 obeyed a cleric once dismissed as too broken to judge her own spell. My final command was not an attack. I called the return cadence once. Sujin release on 3, Haram pull the tag sled, Daun count our breathing, and I would cut the damaged safety rope after all 4 crossed. It was one coordinated task, small enough for my remaining strength. The western brace collapsed as Sujin stepped clear. Mites vanished beneath silver rock. The sled crossed with all 11 tags, and Daun counted 4 living breaths in daylight. The witness crystal turned green before the shaft sealed, confirming a complete objective rather than a lucky escape. Yoon certified 5 achievements: Sujin's staple line, Haram's controlled breach, Daun's safe recovery, 11 tags returned, and the eastern nest cleared. Guild rose from 9 marks to 14. Each mark belonged to something one of us had actually done. The mine contract paid 3,221 gold. Evaluation, rope, medicine, and member shares consumed 1,338. 1,883 reached the principal, leaving 3,408 gold of debt. Yoon entered 14 guild marks in 3 E-rank field promotions. The witnessed clear lifted reputation from 12 to 18 before he raised our official file from registered F to E rank. We gained licensed mine work and better fees, but every future clear faced a higher standard. I signed the certificate after Sujin, Haram, and Daun. I told them the truth Yoon had already witnessed. I could not control every move, and trying would get them killed. They stayed because delegated authority had survived pressure, not because I had performed infallibility. Yoon's valid certificate reached Han before sunset. 14 verified marks and 18 reputation gave him no lawful basis to void it, but E-rank put licensed contracts within our reach. We were no longer starving quietly enough to ignore. Han stamped the next review route through his own office. I learned of it from the copy Yoon kept in our file. Every future promotion petition, witness assignment, and disputed claim could now be delayed at one desk, even when the achievements themselves remained impossible to erase. We left as an E-rank guild with 3 E-rank women, 14 marks, and 3,408 gold of debt. The mine had proven my command was finite. It had also proven the team did not disappear at its edge, which was exactly why Han had begun tightening the road ahead. E rank opened one contract worth fighting over. Escort 7 wagons of fever medicine across 39 miles of forest road. The objective paid only if every wagon reached the hill clinics. One burned axle would turn sick villages into casualties and our reward into a partial claim. 14 guild marks and 18 reputation convinced the depot to trust us. 3,408 gold of debt convinced me we needed the fee. Our new rank created access, not readiness. Sujin's shield brace, Haram's harness, and Daun's tonic stock were still F-rank repairs. The route had 3 goblin choke sites and no room for a fixed formation. We would have to move the wall, the burst, and the recovery circle around 7 separate targets while the convoy kept rolling. A plan that stopped every wagon to fight would fail the medicine before any goblin did. Seo Jin Wook inspected our equipment without kindness. Sujin's breastplate had a crack beneath the left arm. Her shield brace had perhaps 2 hard holds left, and Haram's harness buckle would shear under another uncontrolled pull. Reliable replacements cost more than the contract advance. We bought repair work, not miracles. Seo riveted a crescent plate over Sujin's crack, replaced Haram's buckle with mismatched cavalry steel, and sold Daun 4 diluted stabilizer vials. Every patch shifted failure farther down the road. None removed it. I marked each limit on the convoy map. Sujin would rotate after 17 impacts. Haram would use bursts no longer than 19 heartbeats. Daun would reserve 1 recovery window for the final climb. Scarcity became timing because we could not afford to make it strength. We arranged the 7 wagons as 3 pairs and a rear medicine cart, each wheel hub tied with a different colored ribbon. Sujin rode the center pair. Haram ranged beside the lead, and Daun kept the rear inside a 14-foot rope circle fixed to its bed. My command plan used wagon colors instead of names. Blue meant Sujin rotate forward. Red meant Haram burst and return. White meant every wounded person entered Daun's moving radius. 3 precise signals cost less stamina than shouting a separate order for every goblin. Before the gate closed, I showed all 3 the projected costs. Repairs, road fees, supplies, and shares would take 1,677 gold if nothing else broke. No one mistook the posted reward for profit. We were escorting medicine and a margin narrow as a shield crack. The ambush began at the 9th mile when hooked ropes caught the lead axle. 11 goblins dropped from cedar branches while another group rolled burning brush behind the rear cart. They were not attacking us first. They were splitting 7 wagons into 7 separate failures. I called blue. Sujin jumped from the center cart, planted beside the lead wheel, and used her shield to turn spear thrusts away from the mule team. The first 17 impacts landed against the repaired brace, while the driver cut the hook rope free. At impact 16, I called red. Haram entered rage for 18 heartbeats, broke the goblin winch, and returned beside the moving wheel before Sujin released. Her short burst did not clear the forest. It bought exactly enough road for the lead pair to keep rolling. The second attack came before Sujin's shield could cool. Arrows struck from both banks, and a spear found the crescent patch beneath her arm. The rivets held once, then lifted. One more full rotation on that side would drive metal into her ribs. Sujin shifted the shield to her right and used the wagon body as her missing left plate. I moved a center pair beside her instead of sending her alone toward the archers. The medicine crates became cover because preserving equipment sometimes meant using the objective as part of the formation. Haram asked for another burst, but her repaired buckle had bent from the first. She waited while drivers threw 2 flour sacks into the river. The white cloud exposed goblin shapes on the banks, letting her break 3 bows in a 17-heartbeat pass instead of chasing shadows. A fire pot landed beneath the rear medicine cart, and the mule reared outside Daun's moving circle. I ordered Sujin back before checking her armor angle. She turned too sharply, the crescent patch split, and blood darkened the mail beneath her arm. My bad call spent the protection we had rationed. Daun could heal Sujin immediately, but 2 goblins lay stunned inside 14 feet. A wide cast would restore them. A narrow cast would consume the strength reserved for the final climb. She called white, but not mercy, gathering the wounded while Haram cleared the circle. Sujin held with the unbroken edge of her shield until Haram crossed back at 19 heartbeats. Only then did Daun cast. She stopped it hollow, with the wound sealed, but the armor useless. The recovery saved Sujin and cost our one protected window before the hardest road. 6 miles remained, and Daeun's next safe cast was 83 breaths away. Sujin tied her cracked left plate to the cart rail and fought from the wagon step, exposing no unsupported turn. Haram walked beside her, saving rage because the bent buckle might survive only one more burst. I apologized for the command that broke Sujin's armor. She answered that apology would matter after all 7 wagons arrived. Then she told me the adjustment she needed. No more blue rocations without her confirmation. I gave her that authority while the road was still dangerous enough to test it. Daeun counted recovery breaths from the rear cart, and Haram repeated every 17th count forward. Their voices linked the formation when my command thread thinned. The system responded to that real coordination, but it offered no new plate, no fresh tonic, and no easier hill. The final barricade held 21 goblins around a stolen road chain. Stopping would invite fire from the ravine. Turning would abandon the clinics. Sujin confirmed blue herself and wedged her shield beneath the chain post, using the last sound edge as a ramp for the lead wheel. Haram called her own final red. 19 heartbeats carried her along the barricade, breaking chain anchors instead of bodies. Her buckle snapped on the return, but Sujin caught the loose harness against her grounded shield. The anchor held because both women had chosen the same line. At the 83rd breath, Daeun called white and healed the drivers trampled in the crossing, while every goblin remained outside her rope. 7 wagons rolled into the clinic yard with every seal intact. The witness crystal verified preservation, not merely survival, and the medicine reached every village. Convoy pay totaled 4,018 gold. Repairs, road fees, supplies, and member shares consumed 1,677. The remaining 2,341 reduced our debt to 1,067 gold. Close enough to feel, not close enough to ignore. 7 verified achievements, 1 for each intact wagon, brought Guild to 21 marks. The witness delivery raised reputation to 25, and the association certified all 3 women and the Guild at D rank. Better contracts opened, but D rank danger made our patches an immediate liability. I gave Sujin, Haram, and Daeun 1 vote each on our next equipment purchase. Sujin's shield plate was the obvious need, yet she voted for Daeun's 6-dose stabilizer first. Haram agreed. They chose the resource that could preserve any member, not the armor that protected only one. We returned to Seo's shop with D-rank certification and enough credit to ask for reliable replacements. Baek Do-jin stood at the empty racks, sealing his final priority order. Every shield plate, restraint harness, and cleric stabilizer suited to us already bore his crest. Seo showed me the order because debt still made me a customer, if not a good one. Beck had paid 12% above market to control the next 43 deliveries. D-Rank had unlocked better contracts and announced exactly which equipment could keep us alive while completing them. We stood at 21 marks, 3 D-Rank women, 25 reputation, and 1,067 gold of debt. We had preserved 7 wagons with patches and trust. Now Beck meant to ensure every stronger contract consumed those patches faster than we could replace them. We had survived the D-Rank convoy, but victory had stopped at a strip of red wax. My guild still owed 1,067 gold, and the lien across our registration meant no promotion could be certified until every coin was released through an official claim. Choi Mi-ra turned the ledger so all 4 of us could read it. 21 verified marks made us eligible for C rank, but eligibility bought nothing by itself. Without the lien cleared, we could not bid on a room, store gear legally, or touch the contracts that paid enough to keep climbing. Sujin stood beside me in a fitted coat over her patched armor. Haram folded her arms, and Daeun kept one hand on her medicine pouch. I told them the truth. 1 failed payment would leave us D rank with better enemies, dearer repairs, and no roof of our own. Mira found 1 contract Han's office had overlooked because sensible guilds had refused it. Floodgate lizards had nested inside the western sluice, and the city would pay 5,734 gold, only if all 3 gates reopened before the river reached the lower ward. The payment was enough, but the method was the trap. The lizards grew stronger in moving water. The winches had to be turned by hand, and our own gear was still cracked from the convoy. We needed rented waiters, insulated chains, medicine, and a witnessed clock we could not dispute later. I signed because waiting was another way to lose. Mira registered Yoon Tae-guk as evaluator before Han could reroute the file, then stamped the start time in duplicate. One copy stayed with her, the other went inside Soo-jin's shield lining where no clerk could quietly replace it. Before we bought so much as a bandage, I placed every figure on Im Chil-soo's table. 1,067 gold would kill the lean. 418 rented the water gear. 196 bought medicine. 530 funded equal quest shares. The deductions totaled 2,211 gold. If we cleared the sluice and collected in full, our net position would become positive by 2,456. If the city rejected one gate, we would owe rental penalties on top of the debt we already carried. I asked each woman to approve the risk instead of treating gratitude as consent. Soo-jin signed first, Haram demanded a line for damaged rentals, and Da-eun added that medicine came before bonuses. By the time my name joined theirs, the guild's rules belonged to all four of us. The western sluice smelled of rust and reptile musk. Yoon took position above the floodline with the municipal timepiece, while I split the clear into 3 verified objectives: secure the first winch, purge the central nest, and reopen the final gate without flooding the ward. Soo-jin entered first, her full silhouette braced behind a rented tower shield as the current struck her hips and shoulders. She did not chase kills. She planted at the narrow stair and made 6 lizards spend their strength against the one thing our party could trust completely. Her hold gave Haram a dry approach along the rail. I called 2 short bursts, not one long frenzy. 7 breaths to break the first clutch, 4 to retreat behind Soo-jin. The system counted the gate only after the winch moved, because dead monsters alone solved nothing. The central nest broke open under Ha-Ram's axe, and venom poured into the current. Da-eun could heal us, but anything inside her radius might heal with us. I ordered Soo-jin to pin the wounded lizards beyond the brass drain line before Da-eun spent a single drop of life. Da-eun waited until my count, then shaped one narrow recovery field around Haram's legs. The spell stole color from her face, but no enemy crossed its edge. That restraint mattered more than raw power. We gained time without restoring the creatures we still had to remove. My command skill burned through my chest as I tracked water, rage, poison, and the city clock at once. When my next order came late, Soo-jin repeated the formation call herself. The team held because leadership had become shared practice, not a voice they obeyed blindly. The final winch had been bent inward by the nest, and no amount of muscle could turn it while the gear teeth stayed crossed. Every minute raised the lower ward's flood marker. Killing the last lizards would earn a bounty, but only an open gate would earn the contract payment. I changed the formation. Soo-jin wedged her shield beneath the axle and became the brace. Haram struck the warped tooth on my 3 count. Da-eun sealed the cut on Soo-jin's palm between blows, stopping each cast before it touched the lizards overhead. On the 5th strike, the tooth snapped straight and the wheel moved. I spent my last command surge aligning their rhythm, then nearly went to my knees. The gate rose 12 handspans, the current seized the nest, and Soo-jin held until Haram dragged both of us onto the rail. Yoon checked the 3 gate locks himself, compared his clock with the seal hidden behind Soo-jin's shield, and declared the municipal objective complete. 8 verified marks entered our record because every gate had opened through a functioning plan, not because we had bought a favorable report. The guild system rose from 21 marks to 29, and each woman qualified at C rank through the same witnessed clear. The promotion meant access to facility bids and stronger contracts, but it also meant Han could no longer dismiss us as a temporary D-rank accident. I looked at Soo-jin's swollen hand, Haram's bruised shoulders, and Da-eun's gray lips before I looked at the rank. We had won a legal future, but the rented gear still had to be returned, the medicine replaced, and the people who held the line paid exactly what we promised. The city paid 5,734 gold against Mira's registered claim. She deducted the documented costs, counted the equal shares into 3 separate envelopes, and pushed the final lien voucher toward me with a knife for the crimson cord. I did not cut it alone. Soo-jin held one end, Haram held the other, and Da-eun guided the blade through the knot. 1,067 gold of debt became zero, and the guild system settled our funds at positive 2,456. The number mattered because it changed what tomorrow allowed. We could place our first legal facility bid, keep medicine in reserve, and refuse the kind of desperate advance that let a broker own our choices. Freedom was not wealth. It was one paid decision ahead of hunger. Miura let us inspect a narrow second-floor facility with a leaky window, 2 storage cages, and a legal address. C rank made us eligible to bid. It did not make rent free. I showed the women the deposit and every future fee before asking whether this should become our home. Haram tested the floor. Da-un claimed the window for drying herbs, and Sujin measured the cage for her shield. Then I added our equal quest share rule to the charter. Costs disclosed first, danger agreed together, and every earned share paid before my own comfort. Their trust changed shape in that empty room. They were not 3 discarded women thanking a rescuer. They were 3 C-rank adventurers choosing terms with their guildmaster, each curvy, battle-worn figure taking up space no former party had ever allowed her to own. I learned later that our severed lean cord reached Han's desk before sunset. He had expected debt to do what expulsion had failed to do, keep us desperate, under-equipped, and grateful for scraps. Instead, 29 verified marks and a valid C certificate sat beyond his private reach. Baek Do-jin came to him after the offices closed. I was not there, but the recovered appointment log would later prove the meeting, and Baek's next move supplied the words. Han could no longer starve me quietly, so he invited the man who had collapsed my first guild to act openly. That night, I stood with Sujin, Haram, and Da-un inside our possible Guildhall and read the cleared ledger aloud. Guild 29, 3 C-rank members, C rank, reputation 33, and 2,456 gold. Our debt had died. Our enemies had noticed. Our first morning in a legal Guildhall began with Lee Gyu-tae blocking the stairs. He did not bring threats. He brought a silver-edged contract bearing Baek Do-jin's crest and offered Ji Ha-ram a guaranteed B-rank berth, private quarters, and handlers trained for berserkers. Lee knew exactly where to press. He promised Ha-ram she would never again need to trust a patched shield or a cleric who might heal the enemy. In return, she had to leave before our basilisk hunt and sign away every claim connected to the victories we had earned together. I wanted to tear the paper in half, but a guildmaster who answers choice with control is only a kinder jailer. I told Ha-ram the offer was hers to read. Then I showed her our own ledger, our current funds, and the risks Baek's polished contract carefully refused to name. Park John had registered a basilisk bounty worth 8,417 gold after the scale sale. 9 verified marks could make us eligible for B rank, but only if Yoon witnessed Ha-ram stop at the kill boundary instead of carrying her rage into the formation. A basilisk punished hesitation with stone and punished fury with blindness. Sujin would hold its gaze through a mirrored shield. Da-un would time antidote after each venom pulse, and Ha-ram would break the leg joints in bursts short enough to hear my recall cadence. The stable rage window was 6 heartbeats. On the 7th, Ha-ram stopped recognizing distance. On the 9th, she stopped recognizing allies. We marked Sujin's shield rim white and practiced 1 recall. 3 knocks, Ha-ram's name, then the open sightline home. Safety had a price, whether Lee admitted it or not. Our hunt budget listed 624 gold for antidote, 511 for repairs, 327 for registration, and 1,242 for equal shares. The total cost was 2,704 gold. A clean clear would raise our funds from 2,456 to 8,169. A petrified shield or mistimed cure could consume more than the entire margin before anyone collected a scale. Haram read both documents without speaking. She was powerfully feminine even beneath layered hunting leather, all cinched waist and grounded strength, yet Lee's contract described her like dangerous equipment. Our ledger described what she could refuse, what she would earn, and who carried the risk. Yoon sealed the quarry entrance behind us and started the witnessed hunt. We found the basilisk below the 3rd terrace, long as a wagon and plated in mineral scales. Every statue around it recorded a failed approach, so I treated the terrain as testimony rather than decoration. Su-jin advanced behind the mirrored shield, angling its gaze into bare stone. The impact drove her boots through chalk, but she held a clean sightline between Haram and me. Da-un stayed outside the venom cone with 3 antidote needles already measured. I called Haram's first burst. She crossed the terrace in 2 strides, buried her axe behind the foreleg, and withdrew on the 3rd knock. Rage followed her like fire, but Su-jin's white shield rim gave that fire a door instead of letting it spread through us. Lee had brought rival scouts to the quarry rim, close enough to witness failure and far enough to deny interference. He needed Haram to cross one boundary. A strike against Su-jin would turn his poaching offer into rescue and our promotion record into evidence of negligence. The basilisk changed its pattern after the 2nd leg broke. It swept its tail through Su-jin's angle, severed the white sightline, and forced Haram beyond my voice. I spent command mana to carry the recall cadence across the stone, but the creature's roar swallowed the final knock. Haram's 7th heartbeat passed. Her axe rose toward the moving shape nearest her, and that shape was Su-jin. I could not reach them in time. The next choice belonged to the trust we had practiced when nobody was watching, not to any power the guild system could invent. Su-jin did not retreat from Haram. She struck the shield 3 times, shouted her name, and opened a narrow lane through the dust. Da-un added no spell and no panic. She simply repeated the count they had agreed upon around our Guildhall table. Haram stopped with the axe a handspan from Su-jin's shoulder. She turned on the 8th heartbeat, not the 9th, drove the blade into the basilisk's damaged joint, and stepped back through the white-rimmed sightline before Rage could choose another target. That stop was the true clear. Killing the basilisk proved force. Ending force where she had promised proved control. The guild system recognized a stable team objective because Haram had used a real cadence, Su-jin's real trust, and Da-un's real count to return herself. We finished without chasing spectacle. Su-jin pinned the basilisk's head beneath the cutting frame. Haram broke the final support on my 2 count, and Da-un waited until its body left her radius before healing the venom burn across Su-jin's forearm. My legs shook from the command drain, so the women carried the last phase themselves. Su-jin called the hold, Da-un called the safe cast, and Haram answered both. Yoon witnessed a formation that could execute under pressure without turning my exhaustion into paralysis. 9 verified marks raised the guild record from 29 to 38. Yoon certified 3 B-rank members and B-rank for the guild, which unlocked richer hunts and dearer scrutiny. The people who had mocked Haram as unstable now had a financial reason to own her. The bounty and certified scales brought 8,417 gold. Parks registration, the antidote, repairs, and promised shares consumed 2,704, leaving our funds at 8,169 after every receipt was matched. B-rank did not create a single coin. The money came from a dead basilisk whose scales we hauled, washed, weighed, and sold under witness. We reserved enough for replacement antidote because higher rank only meant the next poison would be harder to survive. Reputation rose from 33 to 42 when Yoon's report named Haram's controlled withdrawal as decisive. That praise protected us from Lee's story, but it painted a brighter target on her back. Ridicule had failed. Purchase had become the rival guild's cheaper weapon. Lee met us in the courtyard and asked Haram whether one lucky stop was worth gambling her future. She did not answer me or look to me for permission. Instead, she called Su-jin and Da-un forward and placed the rival contract between the 3 of them. Haram asked them to witness that she understood the offer: safer gear, higher pay, and a crest that considered her rage useful. Then she returned the contract unsigned because safety purchased by abandoning the women who taught her the way home was only another kind of leash. Su-jin signed the margin as witness, and Da-un signed beneath her. Haram handed the paper back intact, denying Lee even the performance of a torn page. Her choice was public, informed, and made before her teammates rather than offered to me as a debt of gratitude. Lee carried the unsigned contract to Beck that night. I did not hear the report, but I saw its consequences in the surveillance that followed. Lee had gone to purchase an isolated berserker and discovered a B-rank woman whose loyalty rested with 2 other women as much as with me. That distinction frightened Bake. A follower can be bribed by offering a stronger master. A functioning team must be broken in several places at once. Lee's public humiliation also made the next attack personal, which meant mockery and contracts were about to give way to manufactured failure. We returned home with Guild 38, 3 B-rank members, B rank, reputation 42, and 8,169 gold. Haram pinned no rival crest above her bed. She kept the 3-knock cadence and the women who would call her back. At B rank, we finally qualified for contracts that could replace armor before it split. Han answered by making every ordinary notice disappear. Choi Mi-ra showed me the freeze order. Pending administrative review, no new quest could be registered under our crest. The order did not lower our rank or steal our 8,169 gold. It did something quieter. Without a registered objective, the guild system could verify no progress. The association could recognize no promotion, and every week of upkeep would bleed us backward. Mi-ra could not ignore Han's signature, but she stamped the denial time and gave me a copy. Su-jin wanted to challenge him, Haram wanted to break the board, and Da-eun asked the useful question. What kind of objective existed before the association had time to approve it? Park Jeon found the answer inside a city emergency clause. When a gate commander declared active danger, guilds could serve under guard authority, and the commander's witnessed objective counted as legal work. Han controlled ordinary access. He did not control monsters already at the wall. The East Gate had sighted a horned crawler pack moving behind a plated broodmother. Ryu Seong-ho needed one complete party to hold the breach while his guards reset the portcullis. Defense pay and salvage were projected at 11,083 gold if the gate remained standing. The route was legal only if we obeyed Ryu's battlefield command. I registered our crest through the emergency docket, named Yoon as independent witness, and accepted that my leadership ceiling now included following another man's plan instead of treating every order as mine to give. Emergency work charged emergency prices. We paid 887 gold for pavuses and chain hooks, 746 for healing stock, 412 in gate levies, and reserved 1,464 for equal shares. 3,509 gold stood between deployment and collection. If the defense held, our funds would rise to 15,743. If the gate fell, the rentals would be buried under rubble and the city could assess restitution before paying a single coin. Da-eun checked every vial and stated her limit before we marched. 2 wide recovery zones, then only narrow casts. I repeated that she alone would call to stop if life drains spiked. Ryu heard me and warned that an open gate would not pause for a cleric's comfort. Ryu placed Su-jin at the broken hinge, Haram behind the left guard file, and Da-eun beneath the stair. My role was to translate his brawn commands into timings our formation could execute. If I contradicted him, the guard line would split around 2 leaders. Su-jin locked her curvy, armored frame behind a rented pavise and caught the first crawler charge without yielding the hinge. Haram waited through 3 impacts before I released a 5-heartbeat counterburst, then returned behind the guards on Su-jin's shield knock. The first objective was not kills. 2 engineers needed 90 breaths to clear the portcullis track. Every hold bought them a breath, and every reckless pursuit stole one. The guild system remained still until our teamwork advanced the gate's real condition rather than our private glory. The broodmother's horn split the right file and sent 5 guards down together. Da-eun called her first wide recovery zone only after Su-jin shoved the crawlers beyond its edge. The spell closed wounds across the line without returning strength to a single enemy. Life drain struck Da-eun harder than our trial measurements. Blood ran from her nose before the zone ended, so Haram abandoned a clean kill and carried 2 guards into cover. Su-jin widened her hold to shelter the retreat, paying for that mercy with a crack through the rented pavise. Ryu ordered the hinge held at any cost. I answered that it would be held, but not by spending Da-eun beyond the limit she had named. He did not approve. He simply gave us 40 breaths before his reserve withdrew, which was the only room leadership could honestly promise. The portcullis track cleared with the gate still open, but the lowering chain jammed under the broodmother's forelimb. Da-eun cast her second wide zone to raise the chain crew. Halfway through, she looked at me and said the word we had agreed upon: stop. Every instinct told me to demand 10 more breaths. The gate was open, the broodmother was inside the threshold, and one more healing wave might restore the engineers. I cut the spell anyway. Da-un collapsed alive instead of finishing a cast that would have spent her life for our schedule. Neither Sujin nor Ha-Ram blamed her. Sujin left the hinge to cover Da-un's body, while Ha-Ram shortened her rage window and drew the broodmother sideways. Their choice cost us ground, but it preserved the 3 abilities our revised plan still required. I used the 40 breaths to replace healing with geometry. Ryu's guards anchored our rented chain hooks. Sujin became the fixed point, and Ha-Ram broke the broodmother's planted leg in 3 controlled bursts. Da-un directed treatment without casting again. When the creature lunged, Sujin turned its weight across the chain and shouted the drop herself. Ryu's engineers released the portcullis. Iron teeth pinned the broodmother behind the threshold. Ha-Ram ended her rage on Da-un's count and cleared the last crawler from the mechanism. The gate closed because we obeyed Ryu's objective, honored Da-un's stop, and rebuilt the method around the people still standing. 10 verified marks entered our record. Had I forced one more cast, we might have won the gate and lost the team that made the win count. Ryu signed the defense record before his assembled guard, and Yoon certified our contribution in public. The guild system rose from 38 to 48 marks, while all 3 women in the guild advanced from B to A through a witnessed emergency clear. A rank opened national contracts, but it also put our methods under national eyes. Reputation climbed from 42 to 52 because hundreds had seen the closed gate. Han could freeze a quest board. He could not persuade an entire ward that the dawn had never happened. Da-un stood for the certification only after Sujin and Ha-Ram helped her up. She was a soft, feminine figure between 2 battle-worn women, not a spent tool behind them. I made Yoon record that her stop call preserved the formation and enabled the revised clear. The city paid 11,083 gold in defense compensation and salvage. After emergency rentals, healing stock, gate levies, and equal shares, 3,509 was gone for documented uses, leaving our funds at 15,743. We bought no celebration. The cracked Pavis fee was already inside the rental account, and Da-un's remaining stock had to cover recovery. Rank had risen because the defense was verified. Funds had risen because the city paid and we salvaged plates. Neither number created the other. Our reputation reached 52, which gave frightened clients a reason to seek us outside Han's board. It also made a private obstruction visible. The freeze meant to stop our growth had instead proved that our guild could function under city command when the association refused to serve. Han's reply arrived before Da-un could walk unaided. A misconduct audit into our emergency registration, command conduct, and use of healing limits. He could not erase the A certificate, so he tried to redefine the decisions that saved us as evidence we were unfit to lead. Baek answered the failed lockout by ordering Lee to manufacture a field failure beyond the city walls. I learned the shape of that order from the audit questions and the scouts shadowing our hull. Their next weapon would not be denial. It would be false terrain and a death blamed on me. We ended the night at Guild 48, 3 A-rank members. A rank, reputation 52, and 15,743 gold. Da-un's stop had cost us seconds and saved our future. Han opened an audit. Baek began designing a grave. Han's audit froze our promotion at A rank, but it did not forbid fieldwork already registered outside his lockout. Park Jian brought a canyon bounty for the Red Claw pack attacking ore carts, with 14,936 gold projected from bounty and loot. The official map showed 1 entrance, 2 ledges, and a dry extraction road. 11 verified marks were available for clearing the pack and reopening passage, yet the route had no alternate exit. After the East Gate lockout, a contract that clean looked less like luck than bait. I hired Ma Dai-sik before committing the party. His fee hurt, but reliable knowledge was equipment no rival dealer could embargo. Sujin watched me compare seals twice. Ha-Ram memorized both ledges, and Da-un marked every shaded pocket where her healing radius might catch an enemy. Our expense sheet listed 733 gold for Ma's field fee, 1,068 for extraction gear, 911 for repairs, 1,004 for audit council, and 1,495 for equal shares. The total was 5,211 gold. A successful clear would move our funds from 15,743 to 25,468. A trapped party would leave only damaged equipment and an audit ready to call the deaths my negligence. I approved the cost because ignorance had become our true bottleneck. Rank gave us harder maps, not truthful ones. Ma made us carry 200 cubits of rope, chalk every turn, and prepare a western ascent that the official parchment claimed did not exist. Ma stopped us 12 steps inside the canyon. The map marked spring runoff on the eastern wall, but mineral stain ran west. It showed a granite shelf where the stone beneath our boots was layered shale. Someone had copied the outline and replaced the survival details. Park's registry seal was genuine. The parchment under it was not. Ma found fresh wax beneath one corner and boot marks leading away from the survey post. The map had been exchanged after registration, late enough to pass clerical review and early enough to steer us into the throat. I could withdraw and preserve the team, but the saboteur would keep the map and call us cowards. Instead, I changed the objective method. We would enter along the false route, just far enough to trigger the ambush, then climb Ma's western seam and take the kill box from above. Su Jin took point beneath her repaired shield, her strong feminine frame filling the throat without hiding the hand signals behind her. Haram walked 6 paces back to preserve a retreat lane, while Da-un and Ma clipped into the extraction rope at the western wall. The red claw tracks were too straight and too visible. Real monsters wandered toward scent. These had been driven. When Su-jin crossed the white stone Ma had warned us about, horns sounded above and rival-cut ropes released a shelf of shale into the passage. I called the reversal before the rock fell. Su-jin angled her shield into a roof instead of a wall. Haram broke the largest slab before rage took hold, and Da-un cast one narrow recovery line along our rope. The collapse sealed the false exit, exactly as the killers intended. Ma's western seam was not a road. It was a fault line wide enough for half a boot, invisible from below, and stable only where pale lichen crossed the rock. Our extraction rope turned the trap's missing exit into a climb the replaced map had tried to erase. Su-jin anchored below while Da-un climbed first, her narrow waist cinched by the harness and her medicine case tied above the dust. Haram followed without using rage, because one uncontrolled pull could strip every anchor and send the whole formation into the sealed throat. I climbed last after command strain blurred the ledge beneath me. Su-jin refused to move until my rope went taut, then hauled herself up with the shield dragging at her back. Terrain intelligence had not won the battle, but it gave our real skills somewhere survivable to work. The upper shelf exposed the method. Bait cages had concentrated 11 red claws beneath the collapse point, while 2 masked agents waited to release a second rockfall. Their retreat markers used Lee Gyutae's field cadence, 2 white cuts followed by 1 black. We attacked the mechanism, not the men. Su-jin blocked the lever channel. Haram shattered the empty cages in 3 controlled bursts, and Da-un drove the pack away from her recovery line with bitterroot smoke before treating Ma's crushed fingers. When the agents fled, I let them go rather than spend Haram's rage on revenge. We dropped their own barrier behind the red claws, divided the pack into manageable groups, and cleared the registered bounty from high ground. The trap became the formation that killed its own design. Inside the signal blind, Su-jin found a brass command sigil beneath an oilskin packet. It carried Baek Do-jin's guild crest, Lee's field notch, and a serial cut I had seen once before on supply tokens recovered after my first guild collapsed. My silence lasted 1 breath too long. Su-jin heard it. I told her only that the sigil had to reach Mira under evidence seal, but she asked why a man surprised by a crest already knew where to find its hidden serial. I answered with another order, and trust tightened around us. We completed the Ore Road objective before touching the evidence again. 11 verified marks raised the guild record from 48 to 59, and reputation rose because the trapped route reopened. The pending audit still held our official rank and all 3 women at A. Mira placed the false map beside Park's registered copy and documented 6 changed terrain marks. She sealed the brass sigil, the agent's field code, and Ma's statement. Evidence protected the clear, but Han's audit kept 59 marks from becoming another rank. The bounty and loot sale yielded 14,936 gold. Ma's fee, extraction, repairs, audit council, and shares consumed 5,211, settling our funds at 25,468 without one coin from rank. Our reputation reached 61 because ore carts moved again, and Ma testified that we had reversed a falsified route. That public result kept the audit from labeling us reckless, but the sigil made one fact unavoidable. Baek's campaign was tied to the ruin I had never fully explained. Su Jin confronted me before I could lock the sigil report away. She said a shield cannot protect a formation from a blow its commander refuses to name. Haram stood beside her, and Da-un closed the Guildhall door. None of them asked for a softened version. I told them Baek had diverted supplies before my former guild's final expedition, and that the same triple-notch serial had appeared in the ruins. I also admitted I had pushed the mission despite missing stores, then buried the suspicion because proof had died with people who trusted me. I had concealed the link to spare them fear, but hidden danger is not protection. I gave each woman the full file, the audit exposure, and the right to leave with her earned share. They stayed after reading, not because I asked for faith, but because truth made the risk theirs to choose. Baek stopped hiding behind Lee the next morning. His carriage waited across from our hall, while Mira's courier carried the sealed sigil away. He did not need to confess. Showing his face told me that deniable pressure had failed, and the old collapse was now an open battlefield. He sent one message: bring the sigil to the public audit, and he would bring witnesses who remembered my first guild differently. The threat was precise. He meant to turn my old command failure into cover for his sabotage and make the women regret choosing the truth. We stood at Guild 59, 3 A-rank members, A rank, reputation 61, and 25,468 gold. The rigged map had failed to kill us. What we recovered could wound Baek, and the truth behind it could wound me too. The Black Maw siege reached the North Road before Han's audit could decide whether we deserved A rank. Ryu Seong-ho counted a burrowing host, 3 plated breakers, and 1 brood titan large enough to turn the city gate into splinters. Seo Jin-wook could rent us 2 ballistae, but Baek's guild had already bought priority on the ammunition. 7 black steel bolts remained. Rank did not conjure an 8th, and ordinary arrows could not pierce a breaker unless Haram first opened the armor. Ryu offered defense pay and salvage worth 21,758 gold if the Titan fell and the wall held. Yoon would witness the objective, giving our 59 marks a path to C rank, even while Han's misconduct audit waited to call us frauds. We committed 1,987 gold to ballista rentals, 1,436 to 7 bolts and loading gear, 1,184 to treatment, and 2,482 to equal shares. The siege costs totaled 7,089 gold. If Ryu certified the defense and the salvage sold, our funds would rise from 25,468 to 40,137. If either ballista broke, the bond alone could erase months of margin. I assigned authority before positions. Sujin owned every hold call. Haram owned every armor break window, and Da-un owned every recovery zone and stop. I would coordinate between them, but no one needed my permission to protect the limit only she could judge. 7 bolts required 7 purposes. 2 were reserved for the outer breakers, 1 for the gate hinge if a beast reached it, 3 for the brood titan's shoulder plates, and the final bolt for the exposed heart. No frightened crewman was allowed to spend 1 on a tempting silhouette. Su Jin marked 3 hold lanes beneath the wall where her shield could turn a breaker broadside. Haram chose the exact seams she could split within 5 heartbeats. Da-un placed recovery zones behind stone lips, far enough from the Maw host that her healing could touch only defenders. Ryu approved the plan because every shot had a method, not because the guild system promised success. Yoon recorded the allocations before battle. If we changed them, the reason would be witnessed. If we wasted them, no rank panel would pretend the ammunition still existed. The first breaker crossed the stakes with 6 smaller Maw clinging beneath its plates. Su Jin entered the eastern lane, her full armored figure braced low as the impact bowed her shield. She did not stop the monster. She turned it until its shoulder seam faced the wall. Haram struck once, retreated on Su Jin's call, then struck again when the plate lifted. I relayed the open seam to the ballista crew. The first bolt crossed 80 paces and pinned the breaker through both shoulders without grazing the guards beneath it. The second breaker refused Sujin's lane and climbed the rubble toward the hinge. We spent the reserved hinge bolt on the creature instead, because preserving ammunition while losing the gate was false discipline. The shot bought Ryu's engineers enough time to brace the doors. The third breaker emerged inside a dust plume, and our western crew fired on Haram's signal half a breath late. The bolt struck armor she had not fully opened and glanced into the field. 3 shots were gone, 1 had failed, and the brute titan had not yet reached our range. The miss had consequences beyond the ledger. With only 4 bolts left, we could not spend 3 on the titan's plates and still guarantee its heart. I canceled the second shoulder target and ordered Haram to create 1 deeper breach at greater personal risk. Da-un opposed the change until we moved her recovery zone closer to Haram's withdrawal lane. I accepted her condition. Leadership was not choosing which woman absorbed my mistake. It was rebuilding the plan, so the person taking the risk retained authority over survival. The brood titan reached the approach with stone embedded in its hide and a jaw broad enough to swallow a wagon. Sujin called the central hold before I did. Ryu shifted 2 guard files to her marks, and the city line curved around the place she intended to stand. Haram entered on her own break window, buried the axe beneath the left shoulder, and returned on the 5th heartbeat. The 4th bolt tore through the opened plate. Da-un started recovery only after the titan's limb cleared her radius, keeping every pulse from restoring it. I spent command mana, linking the ballista crews, guards, and our 3 calls. The 5th bolt cracked the titan's jaw hinge, and the 6th drove it to 1 knee. My vision narrowed to the final heartline, but the guild system could not give me strength I had already spent. I tried to call the final sequence, and no sound came out. Command exhaustion folded my legs beneath me, while the titan pushed itself upright. The last bolt sat loaded, the heart remained hidden, and waiting for my voice would give the creature time to break the gate. Sujin did not wait. She ordered the central file back, took the titan's jaw on her shield, and turned its chest toward the western engine. Haram answered Sujin's hold with her own 5-heartbeat break, splitting the sternum without crossing the recall line. Da-un called the safe recovery edge, treated Haram, and ordered the ballista crew to hold until every live-in defender cleared her marked zone. The 3 women executed the authority I had entrusted before battle, not a miracle supplied after I failed to stand. Sujin shouted the line clear. Haram struck the final brace. Da-un counted the defender nearest the arc, and Ryu released the crew on their combined call. The 7th bolt entered the exposed heart and stopped inside the titan, instead of burying itself uselessly in stone. When the brood titan fell, the smaller maw lost their burrowing rhythm. Ryu's guards closed the field while our women held the retreat lanes. Yoon witnessed the decisive clear from allocation to final shot, including the moment the plan continued without another order from me. 13 verified marks raised the guild record from 59 to 72. Yoon certified Sujin, Haram, and Da-un at S rank, and the guild at S rank because their functioning command structure had defeated an S rank siege under finite equipment. Defense pay and sold black moss salvage brought 21,758 gold. Rentals, ammunition, treatment, and equal shares consumed 7,089, leaving 40,137 after CO inspected both engines and released the bonds. The 7th bolt had won the title, but 6 earlier decisions had made its path. Reputation rose from 61 to 71 as soldiers repeated how the women finished after I collapsed. That fame made Han's claim that we lacked command discipline look absurd before the audit began. S rank opened siege contracts and national attention. It also raised our equipment problem from expensive to strategic. Beck had nearly denied us ammunition by buying priority. Our next enemy would not need to beat the formation if he could control every tool strong enough to support it. Choi brought Han's summons while treatment salve still covered my hands. The audit would be public, and he demanded we answer for emergency registration, field command, and the canyon evidence. Promoting during his investigation had turned a private obstruction into a national embarrassment. Back filed himself and 3 rival witnesses for the hearing. He meant to revive every accusation surrounding my collapsed guild, attack the brass sigil's custody, and present our S-rank siege as reckless luck. The battlefield had moved from the wall to a room Han controlled. We closed at Guild 72. 3 S-rank members, S-rank, reputation 71, and 40,137 gold. I had fallen before the final order. Sujin, Haram, and Daun had carried the plan without me. Now they would stand beside me in public. We returned from the Black Maw siege with an S-rank certificate, 40,137 gold in the account, and barely enough strength to climb our own steps. Han's suspension seal was waiting on the door before the blood on our armor had dried. The order froze every unsettled claim, including the seeds balance that had paid for rented ballistae already returned. Rank had opened national contracts, but it also gave Han a larger artery to close. If our records vanished during review, our victories would become stories instead of evidence. Su Jin stood broad and steady in fitted plate. Haram rolled one aching shoulder, and Da-un hid trembling hands beneath her cloak. I wanted to send them to bed. Then a client runner arrived bleeding and said men wearing no crest had attacked our relocation wagons. Han summoned us before I could inspect the wagons. He called the hearing a public audit, as if an audience made a trap honest. Bake sat beside 3 purchased witnesses, immaculate in white, while Choi guarded our claim boxes with both hands and refused to surrender the keys. Han said our growth from A to S was statistically dangerous and suspended processing for client safety. I answered with Ryu's battlefield log and Yoon's siege certificate. He did not challenge either record. He ordered them moved to evidence storage under his personal authority. That was the first strike. The second came through the chambered doors. Smoke over our guild quarter, 2 clients missing, and Lee's men breaking into the annex where duplicate quest filings were kept. Back watched my face instead of the messenger. He wanted me to abandon the hearing angry. I did leave, but not on Bake's terms. Before crossing the threshold, I made Choi stamp an emergency evacuation request and Ryu accept command witness. The system counted only verified objectives. Saving people without a record was still right, but Han could use it to erase our proof afterward. Ryu defined the objective in one breath. Evacuate 43 clients and clerks, secure 6 claim chests, capture any contraband, and prevent the fire reaching the lodging row. 15 possible marks sat behind 4 jobs, and every job competed for the same exhausted hands. The bottleneck was not force, it was custody. A rescued witness without assigned transfer could be called missing. A claim chest carried by the wrong guard could be called tampered. I split our routes around Choi's manifest, while Ryu's soldiers marked each handoff in wax. Before we moved, I opened the account books and the sealed file from my first guild. Sujin saw every unpaid repair. Haram saw Bake's sigil beside the false canyon map. Daun saw the supply orders that disappeared before my old team entered its final battle. I gave them access because secrecy had already cost us once. The figures offered no comfort. Guards, relocation, evidence storage, broken walls, and shares would drain thousands before Han released 1 coin. If they stayed, S-rank meant sleeping inside a battlefield we now owned together. Sujin closed the collapse file and said the new archive would stand behind her shield. Haram asked for the evacuation cadence, not revenge. Daun tied her hair back and chose the recovery post. None of them owed me that answer. Each gave it with the danger fully visible. Sujin took the lodging choke point. Her feminine frame braced behind a tower shield shaped to her full armor. She did not chase attackers. She made every civilian pass behind her, one counted group at a time, and turned a narrow lane into a door only we controlled. Haram cleared the wagon route in bursts of 11 breaths. On the 12th, she planted both feet and looked for Sujin's shield rim instead of another target. Lee's masked fighters tried to bait her toward the archive, but she chose the promised line and kept the carts moving. Da-un marked living bodies with blue cord before she cast. The attackers dragged a wounded beast into her radius, hoping her backfire would restore it. She waited until Sujin shoved it beyond the chalk arc, then spent her life force only on our formation and stopped on her own count. Lee entered when the 4th claim chest reached the courtyard. He cut the axle, shed his blank cloak, and told Haram Beck would forgive her if she stepped aside. She laughed once. Then she used the fallen wheel as cover and broke his men's formation without crossing her recall line. I had command strength for 2 full formations after the siege, no more. I spent the first redirecting Sujin from the lodging row to the archive stair, because saving paper meant nothing while people burned, but saving people meant little if Han later declared them never registered. So-jin absorbed Lee's charge at the stair. Ha-ram struck only through the opening her shield created. Da-un held her cast until both women cleared the hostile radius. Their timing came from months of trust, not a rank badge, and the system confirmed 5 marks at once. Choi found the authorization trail where Lee's men had tried to burn it. The suspension copy carried Han's private routing code, entered 7 minutes before the supposed safety complaint existed. She placed it in Ryu's evidence sleeve and made me watch both seals close. That code changed the fight. Han could call one frozen claim caution. He could not explain why Baek's raid followed a private order his office had issued in advance. Choi sent duplicate impressions by 2 guard routes, so neither the hall nor one frightened clerk held the only truth. Baek had expected us to save either our clients or our records. Instead, Choi made each rescue prove the next. Signed evacuees confirmed the attack. Intact claims proved motive. Seized message crystals tied Lee's squads to payments routed through a rival quartermaster. The final chest and 7 clients were trapped in a river warehouse. Lee had stacked illegal blasting salts around them, contraband valuable enough to fund the raid and volatile enough to erase it. Ryu witnessed the seals before Sujin opened a path 1 shield width wide. Ha-ram could have ended the fight by igniting everything. Instead, she broke 4 support pins in sequence, dropping the catwalk away from the hostages. Da-un used 1 narrowcast after the wounded cleared the salts. I spent my second formation command guiding their return through smoke. At the threshold, Lee lunged for Choi's manifest. Sujin took the blade. Ha-ram stopped at her shoulder, and Da-un sealed the wound without touching the captive beast beyond the cord. Ryu counted 43 evacuees, 6 chests, and every contraband seal intact. Han could delay us no longer once Ryu filed the completed objective beside Choi's code. 11,783 gold and held claims cleared. Clients paid 7,429 for protection. Seized contraband sold for 6,829. The 26,041 gold was not profit without cost. Relocation took 2,416. Hired guards 1,873. Repairs 1,596. And secure evidence storage another 817. I paid 2,352 gold in agreed shares, bringing the episode's outflow to 9,054. Funds rose to 57,124, but the money bought distance, witnesses, walls, and custody. None of it made S rank safer. 15 verified marks raised our guild record from 72 to 87, while 8 points of public trust carried our reputation to 79. Our rank stayed S. The result unlocked no miracle. It proved we could preserve a guild while someone tried to tear it apart. Baek came openly after sunset. He looked past me to Sujin's new shield straps, Ha-ram's bandaged hands, Da-un's pale face, and the archive door behind them. He said next time he would not send men without crests. Sabotage had failed, so he promised direct force. I stood beneath a crest rebuilt with paid lumber and guarded evidence. Choi's copy named Han's code, Lee's contraband named Baek's money. The women beside me knew every ugly line in my old file. Our home had become a battlefield, but for the first time, it was truly ours. Han granted our SS hearing because Choi's copied code made refusal look like guilt. He chose the trial instead, a mirror-horn basilisk in the west ring and a blood-glass manticore in the east, 2 S-class monsters joined by 1 resonance brand. Within 14 paces, damage to either creature fed the other, and healing cast near one restored both. A normal tank, striker, and cleric formation would cluster exactly where the link was strongest. Han had turned our proven teamwork into the shape of the trap. The entry bond, custom fittings, medicines, and repair reserve had to be paid before the first gate opened. Failure would cost more than gold. Our 3 S-rank field records would remain capped, while Han gained grounds to dissolve a guild he could not discredit. We built the answer from their limits. Sujin would drag the basilisk west, beyond the resonance line. Haram would strike the manticore for 9 breaths, end her rage on Da-eun's count, and retreat before the creatures could exchange strength. Da-eun would heal only after both targets crossed outside her marked radius. One early cast could refill the pair, one late cast could let Haran bleed out. The system offered no correction. It would recognize our timing only after real bodies proved it worked. I asked each woman to repeat not my order, but her own stop condition. Sujin named the West Groove. Haram named the 9th breath. Da-eun named 2 empty arcs before a cast. Their answers overlapped without mine, and that was the only formation worth trusting. Yoon checked both gates, sealed the timing crystal, and announced the witness double clear. Baek occupied the rival box without disguise. Lee stood among the arena marshals. Men who once bought rumors now needed official badges just to get close to us. The basilisk charged Sujin first. She turned her full armored frame behind the shield, let its horn slide along the rim, and gave ground exactly 3 paving stones. Her role was not to wound it. She had to make a monster choose distance over prey. Across the divider, Haram met the manticore with 1 short burst. Da-eun counted aloud from the safe dais. On 9, Haram's axe stopped a finger from the next strike, and she stepped back shaking. Ending power unused hurt more than spending it. The West Groove required Sujin to turn her shield away from the manticore's firing slit. For months, she had treated an exposed back as failure. This time, she lowered the rim and placed that back in front of Haram, trusting a berserker once feared for striking allies. Haram intercepted 3 blood-glass spines without entering rage. One cut her upper arm. Another split a shoulder plate we had paid to tailor. She never crossed Sujin's heel. Sujin reached the groove because Haram protected the space defense could not face. Da-eun reached 9 and did not look to me for confirmation. Sujin crossed west. Haram crossed east. Both monsters left the blue arcs, and only then did Da-eun heal the 2 women. The spell touched our formation and nothing hunting it. The resonance brand dimmed when the creatures stood 28 paces apart. That was our window. Haram spent 8 breaths cracking the manticore's blood-glass armor, then used the 9th to retreat instead of strike, preserving the limit she had chosen. Sujin pinned the basilisk's horn against the groove without attacking its mirrored scales. Every blocked blow cost her shield durability, and every second bought Haram a cleaner target. Defense produced no spectacle, but it made the damage possible. I held my command mana. Their calls were arriving in sequence without me. Sujin named position. Da-eun named count. Haram named retreat. My leadership ceiling rose only because I stopped filling space they had already learned to hold themselves. On the 3rd cycle, the divider moved. Yoon had sealed it down, yet Lee pulled a second lever hidden beneath the martial rail. 14 paces began shrinking between the monsters. If the rings merged, our next heal would restore both, and their shared wounds would multiply. Yoon did not shout. He turned his recording crystal toward Lee, captured the broken seal, the rival crest under his martial sash, and the timing of the lift. Then he ordered the trial continued, because stopping it while both cages stood open would release 2 monsters into the gallery. Han had built plausible failure. Lee had made murder visible. I spent 1 command burst to reverse our lanes. Sujin abandoned the safe groove. Haram ended rage on 6 instead of 9, and Da-eun withheld a cast while blood ran down both their armor. Da-eun called 5 empty beats. I did not repeat her. Haram heard and cut the manticore's foreleg on 4, then rolled east on 5. Sujin heard the same count, opened her back again, and drove the basilisk west with the shield boss under its jaw. For 1 breath, Haram stood behind Sujin with rage flooding her eyes and an axe raised beside an unguarded spine. She turned the blade outward. The manticore struck it, lost balance, and crossed the eastern arc exactly as Da-eun's final count ended. Da-eun healed without asking me whether the field was clear. Both targets were outside her radius. Both women had honored her timing. The cast sealed Haram's arm and Sujin's shoulder, while the monsters received nothing. 3-way trust became a battlefield instrument. Sujin broke the basilisk's balance rather than its armor, forcing its mirrored throat against the west groove. Haram entered 1 last 9-breath burst and shattered the manticore's exposed core. The resonance brand flared, but distance gave it nowhere to send the wound. On Da-eun's count, Haram stopped. Soo-jin released the pin and redirected the dying basilisk into the empty north wall. Its own horn pierced the soft seam beneath its jaw. 2 targets fell in separate rings, witnessed under a divider Lee had tried to erase. The system awarded 17 verified marks only after Yoon touched both cores and certified the clear. Our record reached 104. The women's field ranks rose together from S to SS because each had completed her role against SS criteria, not because I named them stronger. The witnessed double clear paid 33,077 gold. From it, 3,287 covered trial bonds, 2,714 paid for tailored gear, and 1,639 replaced medicine. Repairs took 1,406 gold after Lee's forced merge, and agreed shares took 2,862. Total costs were 11,908, leaving our funds at 78,293. Reputation rose 8 points to 87 because Yoon released the uncut tampering record with the result. SS rank opened sealed ruin contracts and national emergency authority, but it also stripped Baek's last excuse to use captains and clerks as shields. Yoon placed Lee's hidden lever, broken seal, and recording crystal into separate evidence cases. Han tried to call it a martial error. Then Lee demanded Baek protect him in front of everyone, and the silence from the rival box answered more clearly than any confession. Baek looked at our 3 SS certificates and finally addressed me by name. He said the ruins of my old guild were outside association jurisdiction and warned me not to search them. He had just identified the place he feared while trying to make it forbidden. Soo-jin's back was no longer a weakness Haram might exploit. Da-eun's count was no longer an instruction I had to enforce. We left as an SS guild with 104 verified marks, while Yoon carried proof that our enemy had stepped into the open. Baek's warning gave Ryu probable cause. Lee's recorded tampering supplied the pattern, and Choi matched Han's routing code to the claim freeze that followed. 3 days later, a guard warrant opened the ruins of the guild I had once led and failed to bring home. Nothing inside could count as proof merely because I recognized it. Ryu controlled entry, Choi numbered every seal, and Ma Dai-sik mapped a clean route through wards left unstable for 6 years. If we broke custody, Baek could call every ledger revenge dressed as evidence. Our funds could support the expedition, but not carelessness. Purification crews, evidence vaults, fitted breathing masks, and gear rebuilding were already committed before we crossed the gate. SS rank gave us legal reach into the ruin. It did not make old poison cheap. I knew the entry hall by the angle of its cracked pillars. I had given orders from that stair while people trusted my crest. Now Soo-jin's curvy armored silhouette held the doorway. Haram watched the ceiling, and Da-eun tested the air before anyone followed me in. Ma found ash burrower tracks beneath the flagstones and stopped us 6 paces short of a nest. His fee bought knowledge I did not possess. The creatures hunted vibration. Old ward silver drew them upward, and a charging formation would collapse the floor over our evidence route. I accepted his call. Soo-jin distributed our weight along the wall braces. Haram used a padded hammer instead of her axe. Da-eun marked every spore pocket she could not safely purify. Progress came from restraint, one quiet section at a time. The first nest rose around the quartermaster cabinets. Killing fast would spray corrosive ash over the paper inside, turning possible ledgers into gray paste. The objective was not a monster count. It was a clear that left the room admissible afterward. Soo-jin formed a shield pocket with the cabinet outside her impact line. Haram struck each burrower only after it entered the empty tile Ma identified. Da-eun purified drifting ash in narrow cones, never casting healing near a creature that might drink the spill. I called 3 rotations, then stopped. Command drain blurred the corridor edges, and another order would have been guesswork. Soo-jin took the 4th line. Haram confirmed the kill tile, and Da-eun delayed us until her purification radius was clean. Choi opened the cabinets under Ryu's lens. Routine ledgers remained, but the 6 weeks before the collapse had been ripped from their bindings. The missing shelf was not absence alone. Fresh-cut bolts showed someone had removed it after the ruin was sealed. Ma found drag marks leading to the freight lift. The lower shaft had flooded with ward residue, and the emergency ladder could hold one armored person at a time. Baek had hidden records where force, poison, and bad custody could destroy them together. We set the descent order by function. Soo-jin tested each rung and anchored the line. Choi stayed between Ryu's guards. Da-eun monitored exposure. Haram descended last, because her strength could arrest a fall, but her rage could not be risked in the narrow shaft. The missing chests lay beneath 3 ruin leeches, swollen on ward energy. Their skins reflected healing, and their tendrils tightened whenever metal struck water. We had to remove living hazards without touching the chains or mixing our marks with the old seals. Soo-jin entered alone and let the leeches wrap her shield. Her narrow waist stayed locked behind fitted plates, while the creatures spread away from the chests. Haram severed exposed tendrils in controlled pairs, each cut above the waterline to keep residue off the seals. Da-eun did not heal Soo-jin inside the reflective pool. She waited until we hauled both tank and shield onto a dry platform, confirmed every monster was 14 paces away, then closed the wounds. Choi photographed the untouched chains before Ryu cut them. The ledgers named Baek's Shell Quartermaster and whispered exact diversions. Antidote crates rerouted, ward anchors replaced with plated scrap, and rope invoices paid twice. Delivery stamps showed the supplies leaving our depot 4 days before my final expedition. A second book traced the stolen stock into Baek's Rising Guild at discounted internal prices. Choi read each number into Ryu's crystal while guards took impressions. This was not a planted sigil or a witness who could be purchased. It was Baek's growth written in our losses. The proof also led toward Han. Association inspection waivers bore the same office sequence as the suspension code, but the final authorizing page had been cut away. We had enough to expose Baek's theft, not yet enough to prove who protected it from review. I could have blamed the whole collapse on those ledgers. I did not. The supplies were stolen and the reports were falsified, but I saw damaged ward anchors before the final descent. I ordered my old team forward because retreat felt like admitting I had failed them. That command was mine. Baek narrowed our chances, Han's office buried warnings, and I still chose pride over a withdrawal I could have ordered. People died obeying me. No recovered page could turn my responsibility into someone else's crime. Soo-jin said a wall must name the breach before it can hold it. Haram said I had kept her withdrawal signal when another master would have spent her life. Da-eun asked whether I would retreat now if she called it. I answered yes before asking what it cost. Baek burned his proxies while we were below. Fire rolled through 2 shell offices across the city, and hired torches collapsed the ruins' east exit over us. He could not erase the sealed ledgers, so he tried to make their lawful custodians another old guild casualty. Ma found a maintenance spillway too narrow for the evidence chests unless we held the ceiling. Soo-jin became the brace. Haram broke rubble in 8 measured strikes. Da-eun purified the air instead of healing fatigue, preserving the one resource the whole line needed. I carried the first ledger behind Choi and spent command strength synchronizing the last extraction. Ryu emerged with both seals intact as the roof fell. 19 verified marks appeared only when every person, chest, and custody record crossed the warrant boundary. The Ruin Clear produced 18,973 gold in monster bounties, 16,284 from lawful salvage, and 12,559 as an evidence recovery reward. Against 47,816 gold received, the expedition cost 4,683, legal custody 2,197, purification 2,844, and gear rebuilding 3,526. Agreed shares added 4,095, bringing total costs to 17,345. Funds reached 108,764, and reputation rose 6 points to 93, but no coin replaced the names buried there. Baek arrived after the evidence had entered guard custody, too late to buy or burn it. He called the ledgers the work of dead clerks. Ryu answered with sealed chain records, Choi with matching payments, and I answered by naming the supplies Baek's first elite squad had worn. He challenged me before investigators could follow the missing authorizing page to Han. His guild would seize the next SSS target, he said, and prove strength mattered more than old accounts. It was not innocence. It was an attempt to outrun evidence with spectacle. My record stood at 123 marks. Our rank remained SS, and Bake was more dangerous than another promotion. The women renewed their oath beside the ruin, not because I was blameless, but because I had stopped asking loyalty to hide my blame. The recovered ledgers forced Han to schedule our SSS qualification before Beck could bury another witness. He answered by designing 3 simultaneous objectives: hold the North Breach, destroy a Western relay, and evacuate the poisoned South Cloister. All 3 had to finish inside 17 minutes, with no member crossing between fronts. The distance made direct command impossible. 1 full formation already drained me. 3 separate command streams would empty my mana before any objective reached its hardest turn. Han called that the leadership standard for SSS. He was right about the limit and dishonest about the purpose. If I tried to control every decision, we would fail. If I delegated, he expected one of 3 former F ranks to hesitate without my voice. I gave each woman an objective, a reserve, and stop authority. Sujin could abandon the breach if civilians entered her collapse zone. Haram could delay the relay strike if rage blurred her recall. Daun could halt evacuation before healing endangered the living line. They chose their own methods. Sujin requested 4 anchor spikes instead of a second shield. Haram traded an attack draft for cooling salts. Daun divided antidote into 37 measured doses, preserving 1 cast for injuries the poison could not explain. The distinction mattered. Delegation was not sending them away with pieces of my plan. It was trusting plans they could defend better than I could. My role was to coordinate the opening and the return, then leave room for 3 leaders to work. Yoon sealed his timing crystal at the same instant Ryu rang the start bell. Choi filed 3 objective slips through separate clerks. I sent 1 opening cadence across the mirrors, felt command mana leave me in a hard wave, and released each front to its leader. Sujin reached a breach vomiting stone guardians into the market. Haram found the relay moving between armored pylons instead of fixed to 1 altar. Daun discovered 42 people in the cloister, 5 more than Han's issued count had listed. Any correction from me would arrive through delayed crystals and steal attention from facts already in front of them. I kept silent. The system remained dark because preparation earned no mark until each woman converted judgment into a verified result. Sojin ignored the marked defense circle when she saw its foundation splitting. She moved 11 paces north, planted the 4 spikes in load-bearing stone, and angled her shield to turn each guardian away from the market instead of merely surviving their blows. The change surrendered the evaluator's ideal sightline, but saved the evacuation road. When a cart entered her collapse zone, she invoked the stop authority I had given her, released 1 anchor, and let the breach widen away from the civilians before sealing it again. I saw the north mirror shake and nearly ordered her back to the painted circle. I stopped myself. Sujin possessed the ground, the weight, and the lives beside her. Overriding her from a tower would turn leadership into panic-wearing authority. Haram's target transferred whenever rage struck its shell. A Lomber burst would chase it forever and set the aqueduct alight. She recognized the loop on her 3rd attack, ended rage after 7 breaths, and used cooling salts to make the empty pylon look active. When the relay jumped toward false heat, she broke the receiving rune before touching the core. The recoil opened her arm and drove frenzy into her eyes. No one called recall. Haram counted herself down, 1 breath at a time, and did not spend the 8th. Her strike differed from the sequence we rehearsed, but the objective was destruction, not obedience. I let the western channel stay silent. She shattered the exposed core with controlled force and redirected the ember spill into an empty stone basin. Da-un had 37 antidote doses for 42 people. She tested symptoms and found 5 were suffering smoke panic, not poison. Treating the manifest instead of the bodies would have wasted every reserve and left true victims without enough strength to walk. She formed 7 groups of 6, placing the poisoned at each center and the stable along the rope. Her feminine silhouette remained upright beneath a cinched healer's coat as she led them beyond the hostile radius before spending 1 narrow healing cast. A corrupted shrine beast entered the rear group as the cast built. Da-un canceled it, accepted the life force backlash, and ordered the formation onward. Sujin and Haram could not protect her there. She protected her own rule, then purified the beast after every civilian cleared. Sujin sealed the north breach first. Haram's relay corps reached Ryu's evidence basket next. Da-un crossed the south line last, with all 42 evacuees accounted for. Yoon's crystal measured 16 minutes, 21 seconds from bell to final custody. I spent my remaining command strength only on their return cadence, aligning 3 exhausted routes so none collided in the plaza. The women chose every decisive call before that moment. My ceiling had not vanished. We had built a structure that no longer stood on it alone. The system confirmed 7 marks per objective, 21 in all. Our record rose from 123 to 144, but rank did not change automatically. Verified eligibility still required the witnessed certificate Han controlled. Han denied promotion. He pointed to the wall clock, which showed 17 minutes, 7 seconds, and declared a 7-second violation. The crowd had seen 3 victories. One altered face now tried to make them unofficial. Yoon objected with his sealed crystal. Han called it secondary equipment and claimed the central clock governed. Choi requested the clock maintenance record. Ryu ordered guards around the mechanism before any association technician could touch it. We had completed the trial 46 seconds faster than Han admitted. He stole those seconds because he could not steal the objectives. I refused to challenge the dais by force. A provable denial was stronger evidence than an angry guildmaster giving him disorder to punish. The city still owed for completed work 21,467 gold for breach defense, 18,936 for the relay corps, and 16,499 for rescue and purification. From 56,902 gold, trial bonds cost 4,913, rare consumables 5,864, repairs 3,917, and treatment 2,641. Agreed shares cook 4,802, making total costs 22,137. Funds rose to 143,529, and reputation to 97, yet Han's false clock kept all 4 ranks at SS. Choi found a maintenance entry made under Han's private code 9 minutes before the trial. Yoon's crystal and Ryu's bell log matched each other exactly. Inside the clock, a filed escapement had added 46 seconds after the starting seal. Before they could issue the corrected certificate, the city's SSS Rift alarm sounded. Beck's guild was already mobilizing toward the breach, claiming first target rights. He meant to seize the one core powerful enough to bury our proof beneath a public triumph. Sujin, Haram, and Da-un had completed a qualification designed beyond my leadership ceiling, and I had not overridden one independent call. Han denied the title, but the work remained real. We turned toward the rift with 144 marks and no seconds left to waste. The SSS alarm sounded before Han's altered clock could be removed from evidence. A gold-black wound opened above the eastern heights, shedding rift beasts toward 6 crowded districts. Baek's banners moved before the second bell, as if his guild had known where to wait. Choi had filed our emergency response at the first bell. Yoon carried the corrected qualification crystal, and Ryu accepted battlefield witness. Those steps mattered because an SSS core could decide the city's survival and the official history of who had saved it. Our account held 143,529 gold, enough to mobilize, but not enough to replace a dead team. Rank remained SS. 23 verified marks stood between our guild and recognition, and no mark was worth crossing a stop line. Baek claimed first target rights with a writ signed by Han before the rift alarm. Choi compared its routing sequence to our old inspection waivers. The numbers continued across the missing page from the recovered ledgers, linking Han's office directly to Baek's stolen supplies. Ryu impounded the writ, but could not pause an open rift. He divided authority. Our guild would contain the breach and rescue the eastern line. Baek's force would defend the empty southern approach. Yoon recorded the assignment where neither master could rewrite it. Baek accepted, then moved half his strike team toward our flank as soon as the first beasts descended. He was not fighting for the city. He needed the core in his custody before Choi could use the pre-signed paper to prove Han had promised him the result. The qualification had left my command channels raw. I could establish the formation and, if I conserved everything, coordinate one return. There would be no second correction. Sujin, Haram, and Da'un had to own the battle between those two commands. Sujin chose the breach foot, where every impact would travel through her fitted armor. Haram marked a recall line, 17 paces from the core shell. Da'un tied blue cord only around living guards and civilians, excluding every human-shaped echo the rift produced. I gave the opening cadence, shield inward, rage in 9 breath bursts, healing after 2 empty arcs. Then I closed my channel and felt silence where control used to be. Leadership had brought us there. Trust had to carry them farther than my strength. The breach tried to widen around Sujin. She drove both shield edges into the plaza and made her full armored body the hinge, not to stop the rift itself, but to narrow every creature into a lane the guards could survive. Baek's flankers cut one anchor cable, hoping the next surge would throw her aside. Sujin released the damaged line before it pulled civilians into the breach, shifted her narrow, cinched waist behind the second brace, and rebuilt the hold one-handed. 7 verified marks appeared when Ryu's last civilian group crossed behind her, and the breach remained contained. The consequence was immediate. Sujin could not follow us to the core. SSS defense meant holding the worst place after everyone else moved on. Haram reached the core in 3 controlled bursts. Each ended before the 17th pace. The shell opened only when rage struck it, tempting her forward with every fracture, while Baek's team attacked from behind and called retreat the cowardice that ruined my first guild. On the 4th burst, Baek crossed our line and drove his spear into the shell, trying to make the core record his claim. The backlash fed Haram's frenzy. She lifted her axe, saw the chalk beneath Baek's boots, and stopped without waiting for my absent voice. She struck the fracture from our side of the line. Baek's spear carried the force inward, splitting the shell he meant to steal. 7 marks confirmed the core break, because Haram achieved it without abandoning recall. Control, not destruction alone, earned her SSS proof. Breaking the shell released copies of every wounded person Da'un had seen. They begged in familiar voices and moved inside her healing radius. One broadcast would restore the echoes, refill the rift, and drain enough life from her to end the real formation. Da'un checked blue cords, pulse, and shadow before each narrow heal. A real guard without a cord received pressure and was carried beyond 2 empty arcs before she cast. An echo wearing a copied cord failed the pulse test and dissolved when she purified it. 5 marks appeared when every living guard entered the return corridor, and no echo received healing. Da'un's SSS proof was not the size of her miracle. It was knowing exactly whom her power served, then accepting the pain of refusing everything else. The broken core began closing the rift from both ends. Sujin could not see the inner path. Haram's hearing was drowned by collapse, and Da'un had no life left for another cast. The one command I had saved had to bring 3 separate truths into one return. I opened every channel. Sujin released her west brace on my second beat. Haram carried Da'o through the gap on the 3rd. Da'un used no healing. She called living bodies as they passed. I spent the last of my mana naming Belaine home. They crossed as the breach sealed behind Haram's heel. 4 marks confirmed a complete team return, raising our total gain to 23 and our record to 167. I fell before I saw the sky clear, but 3 hands kept me off the stone. Baek emerged, demanding the core because his spear had touched it. Ryu had recorded the flank attack, the cut anchor, and Haram's strike driving through that spear. He arrested Baek for assaulting a witnessed formation and attempting to seize guarded evidence. Han arrived with an order voiding our result for entering Baek's target zone. Choi produced our first bell filing and his pre-signed writ. Yoon added Lee's arena recording and the altered clock. The recovered ledgers completed the same authorization sequence. Han had expelled me as worthless using a collapse he helped Baek create, then altered claims, trials, and time to preserve the lie. He ordered association clerks to reject the evidence. This time, they looked at Ryu's guards, Yoon's seals, Choi's copies, and refused him. The witnessed rift defense paid 43,917 gold, and the guarded core sale brought 31,566. The gross total was 75,483, earned by containment, break, rescue, and return. Mobilization cost 7,284. City restitution 5,913, treatment 4,468, and rebuilt equipment 6,537. Every damaged street and broken plate had a claimant. Agreed shares took 7,374, making total costs 31,576. Funds closed at 187,436. Rank created none of that gold. Completed work and paid consequences did. Yoon certified the corrected qualification and final rift clear. The registry recognized rank 9, SSS. Soo-jin, Ha-ram, and Da-eun each received SSS field status for defense, controlled destruction, and living formation support proven under witness. Reputation reached feared and respected at 100. The title hook milestone no ordinary contract could round into existence. Each woman could leave with an SSS license and choose any guild. Soo-jin took her place behind our crest. Ha-ram and Da-eun joined her freely. Han once stamped me rejected, and Beck built his power on the people I failed. Now both stood exposed by records we preserved and victories they could not erase. Guild 167, 3 SSS members, recognized SSS Guild. I was still Kang Tae-min, the guild master they chose.